Over the last 3 days, I've been having pretty much just back-to-back meetings with a whole load of the ecosystem involved in the telecommunication space and within IoT. I was also speaking, moderating at a couple of panels, one looking at connectivity with a brain and another one looking at the supply chain and logistics sector. Very interesting things to do. I've also recorded a podcast, had a ton of meetings, a ton of opportunities to bump into people at the show, which we've really missed. Being able to actually talk to people, see people, spend quality time with everyone, because you don't get quite the same interaction with people if you're doing it over Zoom calls. Not quite the same as meeting people in person. Logistics has been tremendously transformed over the course of the last few years. One interesting data point that I picked up at this show was that something like there's been a 600% increase in the use of e-commerce, which means growing e-commerce, lots more delivery required. You've got a lot of interesting new technologies arriving, things like the use of drones, phenomenal stuff there. You've also got a lot of regulation for things like shipping food, shipping medical equipment, medical supplies, and so on. All of which drives a requirement to understand what's happening within the supply chain, understand where a item might be and checking what its provenance is and what its status is and so on. All of which requires some form of monitoring, and if IoT does anything well, it's monitoring and checking where things are and what status they have. Mobile is absolutely critical within the logistics space. After all, we're talking about predominantly devices that could be located anywhere. They could be a shipping container on a ship. They could be a truck that's somewhere out in the country. It could be a package. You don't know where it is. Ultimately, cellular mobile connectivity is going to be the choice technology for this logistics space. And we do a lot of work on tracking the IoT space in terms of the volumes and the value of the market. And this logistics space is something like 20-25% of the whole value of the Internet of Things. So not only is it critical to the logistics space, it's also critical to anybody who's in the IoT space. Increasingly, a lot of our research is focused on sustainability. Historically, you would think about IoT as being either a way to make money, save money, stay out of jail. But now there's a kind of a fourth element to it, which is being green. And that's one of the drivers now for IoT. It's not just about how can I make my supply chain more efficient, or how can I save some costs with having connected heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, all these sorts of things. It's increasingly about how do I reduce my carbon footprint. And we did a big study just recently looking at the sustainability impact of a whole load of different use case areas, and supply chain, logistics, that sector is an absolutely critical one. For instance, drones is a good example. Drone delivery is 1/6 of the carbon footprint of delivering things via motorcycles. Using IoT within the fleet management context, you can save something like 20 to 25% on your fuel costs, which obviously in today's environment with rising fuel costs and also an increasing green agenda, increasing requirement for meeting environment, social and governance goals, ESG goals, that's seen as being absolutely critical to any organisation. We've kind of put in place the building blocks for supporting all of these weird and wonderful use cases, some very mundane use cases of course as well, in terms of putting the networks in place, having the software platforms that are available, working out the use cases and how those all play out. And I think it's now a question of democratizing that, pushing that out to almost every organization, and we'll really see a connected future. That's the kind of thing that I'm really excited about in terms of what mobility can do for the world, and that's the kind of thing I'm having the conversations about here at Mobile World Congress.